Right, I have hopped back over to this side of the sofa to make some room for our next guest. When we asked you what topics you would like us to discuss, a number of you got in touch talking about the issues that crop up when you're a grassroots coach. Some of you watching may have been taking qualifications, some of you may just volunteer your time helping at your local club. But I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Lee Suter to delve into the topic of grassroots football coaching a little more.
Yes, Lee, very warm welcome to the show. I'm going to read this because you've been involved in the grassroots game for a number of years, from a volunteer to working within the game. Not only a qualified coach, but you've mentored coaches and you now tutor them on courses as well. That's quite a career. So tell us a bit about you and how you first got involved with coaching.
Thanks, Jason. Well, thank you for having me on the Ramble. About 16 or 17 years old, I decided playing wasn't for me. I wasn't very good, wasn't really enjoying it, but I felt that I could give something back to the game. So I contacted my local grassroots club, and that's been my life ever since. So I've been a grassroots volunteer for 20 years now at Faversham Strike Force. I've worked at the County FA for 15 years and been a mentor and FA tutor for over 5 years now. And I'm still a grassroots coach. I still love getting involved, and I think that's really important, that if you work in the professional environment of the FA or the Kent FA, that you understand the challenges that are faced at grassroots. And
certainly within all those roles and your career to date, you've seen all the elements, I suppose, of what it takes to be a grassroots coach and mentoring people and then delivering the coaching courses. What do you find are the most common hurdles and problems that grassroots coaches face?
Grassroots coaches, I think, is about managing their time and understanding. It's about finding time to deliver good sessions, a quality match day experience, while trying to keep up with their life and their work and everything that goes with that. And it's about them understanding that learning doesn't just look like a formal qualification. It might be listening to a podcast, getting on Facebook or Twitter and listening to other coaches and learning that way.
I think it's a really good point, because I think lots of people who love football think, yeah, I can get into that and do it really easily. But it takes a lot more, doesn't it, to deliver a session? There's so much more to it, isn't there?
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the challenges, is when a volunteer goes in, it's not always spelt out to them what commitment that they might need to make in terms of what they're going to be asked to do and expectations. You think you're just going to manage the team on a Saturday or Sunday, but it turns out actually you're the kit man. You might be the only person in that child's life that tells them the difference between right and wrong and act as a role model. You have to deal with parents, you have to deal with money, you have to deal with other adults within the club, and it can be a real challenge. And it's just about what can we do as the FA and the County FA to support them and make that journey a little bit easier.
So much more than just being a coach, isn't it? And quite a lot of coaches got in touch with us to ask about, how to plan and deliver sessions. What are the tips when you've got a new group of coaches on a course you lead?
So I think the challenge is again finding time to plan, and it's important to recognise that what planning looks like for an individual. So is that planning on the way from work to a session, or is it I've got a little bit more time, I'm going to sit down? When we talk about planning, it's really important to make sure that everything we do is about the game of football. So we go out and see sessions, and I look at them and I think, actually, how does this relate to the game? I.e. a warm-up which is running around the outside of a pitch, which we've all been there and done. And it's like,
classic
actually
Sunday league back and forth.
Yeah, I think so. And it's just a case of, okay, that's fine, but the trade-off is that they're probably not going to get better at football, but they are going to get good at running in straight lines. So everything I try to do when I'm planning my session and try to encourage other coaches is have a look at the game and think, right, what does this look like in my session and how can I bring it to life?
I think you've already touched upon being a football coach is more than just kind of delivering those sessions. Sometimes you have to be a role model, you're kind of like a guardian almost. And one of the things we spoke about in the last episode was the introduction of the sin bin rule, and particularly in youth football, obviously that's been introduced to try and curb dissent and issues like that. But again, I think what is quite a common problem in grassroots football, particularly youth football, is sometimes the behaviour of parents. How do you advise coaches on managing poor behaviour, not only from players but parents and the whole dynamic on a Saturday or Sunday morning?
Yeah, I think it's a real challenge, and I think that could be off-putting for a number of people who are considering volunteering and becoming a coach, is dealing with parents. But the challenge we face is we put them on this pedestal of thinking they are going to be a nightmare, and we put them there immediately, and then immediately we're putting up barriers of, actually, we don't want to talk to the parents, we don't want to engage with them, because if we do, they might find out that I'm a fraud, or they might not. They might know more than I do about the game. But actually, I think it's really important to engage them parents right from the start. Be honest and transparent. What does your role look like? What are your aims and ambitions for this team? And if it's equal playing time, rotating positions, having fun, we're not going to focus on the result. If you can spell that out to the parents and say, look, this is what we're going to do, then I think that makes the role a lot easier. And like everything we do in life, if it's a work culture or friends culture, it's about underpinning those values and behaviours all the time. It's not just a touch point at the start of the season where we get that message across. It's got to be every match day. Look, this is how I need you to come on board with us, come on this journey, and let's make sure that everyone's involved.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because it almost correlates to the best practice we've been advising around marketing, in terms of striking up a dialogue and not being afraid of that two-way conversation, and ultimately the effect that then has subsequently building a community, and it starts with the very basics in the same way in coaching. Yeah,
and I think so. And I think it's, if you don't have that communication, you start immediately putting up barriers, and also your imagination starts to run. So if you're not having communication, then you're maybe making up what that parent's thinking, or not understanding why they're acting in that way. I think we make a lot of assumptions that parents bring their child to our environment of football and they immediately know how to act, when actually there's quite a lot behind that. What is their personality? What was their football upbringing? What was their mum or dad like on the sideline? Do they consider it acceptable? And it's about going, actually, why you're here, why your son or daughter is with us, this is how we'd like you to act, and this is why. So children have told us that when their parents, mum or dad, shout instructions, it feels like a massive spotlight on them, and it embarrasses them. They're there with their mates. Having your mum or dad shout at you is not nice. It embarrasses them and puts them under pressure, which we don't need. So it's about the coach also explaining, look, this is why I want you to act like this. This is why I want you to buy into what I'm doing.
And again, because we've been talking predominantly about youth football, but I know later on in the show we're going to talk about the challenges that clubs face in terms of player recruitment a little bit later on. So I guess the point you're making there about how important that experience is then can affect a person's interaction with football as a whole, whether they're a volunteer, whether they're a coach or a parent.
Yeah, no, I think we have a duty of care as football coaches to be more than that, to be more than a football coach, is to actually say, look, while you're in our environment, you don't act like that. You don't go to McDonald's and when you don't get your food, you don't start shouting over the counter. But at football, it's deemed almost culturally acceptable that parents do it.
Changing that culture, isn't it?
And it's about getting them to buy into it and explaining the reasons why we don't act like this. It's because it embarrasses the kid. If you're instructing the kid, it might be at the detriment of what the coach has told them. So it's about everyone buying into what they're trying to achieve.
Okay. Another thing lots of coaches want to know about is funding opportunities, and CPD, which I've learnt means continuous professional development. It could sound a bit scary and off-putting, but that sense of professionalism is there to safeguard and a whole other variety of reasons to make grassroots game better. Could you just tell us a bit about the whole strategy behind it?
So it's important to understand that the learning that takes place on a formal FA level 1 or level 2 or UEFA B course, that's only just a snapshot of it. It's just a real have a go, look at some tutors, experienced tutors, work with each other, learn from your peers. The real learning comes from moving away and doing it in your own environment. So I think 70% of learning that we do is having a go. And I think that comes down to the CPD opportunities around, have you got a mentor who can give you some feedback, who you can work with? CPD might look like a podcast, picking up a book, speaking to people from different industries. There's some real good environments out there, if it's Navy SEALs or it's Google, that have some real good creative practices of how they develop an environment, and it's looking at them and seeing what we can bring from their environments into footballs.
We're certainly spoiled, aren't we, for resources compared to 10 plus years ago when it comes to the internet.
Yeah, and I think that's really key, is it's really key to use that resource as well. So you don't want to be an under-7s coach and go on YouTube and find a Real Madrid rondo practice, keep ball practice, and then try and deliver that on a Tuesday night to your under-7s. It's got to have a look at it and go, how can I adapt this for my players? And that's what I say to the level 1 students all the time is, don't look at a practice and thinking it's wrong or right, or you won't use it or you will use it. Look at it and go, how can I adapt this to meet the needs of my players?
And for anyone watching the show who, like you say, thinks they want to give it a go and they want to maybe take that first step on their coaching career, which is a level 1, what words of encouragement would you give them to almost, I say, professionalise, but actually just obtain that qualification and that skill?
Yeah, I think we have a duty anyway to do the qualifications, especially the level 1, because you're bringing up a generation of footballers and you need that academic understanding of what football coaching looks like. But I would say it is scary going on your level 1 if you're not used to a classroom-based environment. If you haven't been in a classroom since you was at school, university or college, it's a real walking into an environment where you might not know other people. What I would say is the level 1s offer an excellent learning environment now. They're very much focused on grassroots coaches. We have lots of positive feedback. I try when I'm delivering my courses, and I know the other Kent tutors do it, it's about actually we're in this together. I'm not your tutor. You're not all individual coaches that are just getting on to your first step. We're in this together to try and all move grassroots football on.
I imagine you see a massive change in confidence from when they walk into the classroom to the end of the course.
Yeah, and we have coaches that have been within the grassroots game for 10, 15 years who are just actually, because of the governance around FA Charter Standard and the FA programme, they're almost being pushed onto it. But actually when they get onto it, they understand that there is a real benefit to this formal learning underpinned by the informal going on websites, etc. So there's a real key. Football moves on. So it's a case of, I always say, do you want to be a coach for 20 years or do you want to be a coach of 20 different years? Yeah. Because you need to keep upskilling. The world moves on. If you look at kids now, how they learn, do we need to teach them about offside? Probably not, because they know it better than us playing FIFA and elements like that. So the environment is changing. It's a modern world, and going on these qualifications help you.
Well, I can't ever profess to having been on a coaching course, but thank you so much for really shedding some insight, and it's quite eye-opening to hear about the other opportunities. And without grassroots coaches, we really couldn't build our clubs and build the game in this country. So thank you so much for shedding a bit more light on that.
Cheers, Lee. If you want more information on coaching courses where you are, check out the FA's website and keep an eye on our social media channels, because we'll be continuing the conversation on there. All the links are in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a ramble.